One of the reasons that we're meeting tonight is to just get clear about why we're doing this special edition of Kindred. And it's really to support parents in being able to follow their heart and listen to their babies in how they parent their children, because the dominant cultural message out there is not about nurturing, and it's not the norm. And if our articles can normalize nurturing, then I feel like we will have made a huge contribution to parents. So I am excited to have all of these amazing writers sharing what they're doing in the world that forwards normalizing nurturing. And so I'd like to hear from each one of us what we feel about the article that we wrote.
I think that it was a well-timed opportunity to reflect on 2 decades. As you mentioned, Lisa, many of us have been doing this work. And in reflecting on 2 decades, it wasn't just the 10,000 hours or whatever. It was sort of the historical time period that was. So for many of us, our observation of what was happening for families, for parents, for especially new parents, in my instance, was before the shift before the shift to a more democratized way of knowing, like how do we know what we know? And today we know what we know because we talk to each other and we discover what is true by talking to people. But 20 years ago, only people in ivory towers with letters after their name knew anything, and we were all supposed to just read what they wrote and apply it to our lives. And if it didn't fit our baby or our family, we were just supposed to make ourselves fit what was in the book. And speaking of that, we had books and maybe we had magazines, but we didn't have things that were written last week or things that were studied in the last 18 months. And so as I was putting my thoughts to paper, which was really just a collection of little things that I had written here or there about the model of having a facilitator function like a doula would function at a birth. So the role a doula plays prenatally leading up to the birth, the role a doula plays at the birth, the role a doula might play in the weeks following the birth. In the model in Portland, Maine, called Birth Roots Center for Community Supported Parenting, the facilitator plays that role for a collection of people. And really that facilitator's role is to ask really well-worded questions or prompts so that the group paints a picture or puts a puzzle together and the group understands itself and its own experience in real time. And in building that understanding of itself and of the babies they are each parenting and how they are each different in their parenting identity and role and what they bring to parenting, there was a way a map is created for them, not from me as the facilitator or any of the other Birth Roots facilitators, and not because we read a book that told us, but because someone bothered to ask us, what do we think? How's it going? What do you need? And when you hear your own story and you listen to 8 to 10 other stories, suddenly it all makes sense. And so having the opportunity to be part of this group, which had the intention of normalizing nurturing, it was a really, like I said, well-timed chance to put it all in one place. And so I felt really good about the description of what has been happening. And then per Pam's prodding, she was like, give more specific, concrete examples. And so having the opportunity to be like, okay, here's a really, in real life way of describing how that works. So that you can read in my article.
I'd like to say thank you so much, Leah, not only for the article and for getting a glimpse inside of Birth Roots. And I hope I can say this without crying. Oh, gosh.
Crying is so good. Please cry, Lisa. We all have so many tears.
You have permission to cry.
Yeah.
Happy tears, rageful tears.
Yeah, it's all good. It's oxytocin in action.
Well, it's the reason I'm still here doing this. No. I'll get it together. Hold on. But reading your article, I just went, oh my gosh, I'm back in the public park where Kindred all started, and I'm sitting in that group of 40 mothers And I was the mom who wheeled over in my little baby stroller and turned away shyly to nurse and turned back around. I've told the story a million times at conferences, but I turned back around to nurse. And when I finally kind of mentally, physically arrived and sat there, and I watched mothers who were comfortable with their bodies, babies who were toddlers getting up and running across the middle of the circle and jumping on another mother's lap and lifting her shirt. And I had this modeled for me. And it's something happened that was so transformative and deep. And every time you talk about what you're doing there at Birth Roots, I remember that it was transformative. It was, and I tell people I didn't become a mother until my son was about 8 months old. And we finally left the house after the winter and the colic and the stuff. And finally sat there and watching the other mothers model what that was. I got a download and I'm like, oh, I'm one of these. I've told people over the years, it could be monkey see, monkey do, or it could be a quantum download. You call it what you want, but I got a download. And that just set me up. That set me up to be successful and being confident in nurturing my son. So thank you, Leah.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
So what I want to do is turn this corner into explaining a little bit about a couple things. One, the evolved nest is the holistic scientific theory. And what we're doing here and you're doing is the praxis. So it's the applied evolved nest. So you have the theoretical hard science that you can refer to and say, as Leah was saying, oh, it's great to have this so we can share it with people and it's codified in a way that's simple. And then we're going to listen to our hearts and do the holistic integrative piece of seeing how this works out. But also most of us were already following our hearts. And especially 20 some years ago when most of us got started, we were lucky to have Pam 20 years ago. Thank you again for that glorious Connection Parenting book that we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of now. But one of the writers that we have this time is Aaron Lochner, who has written a book on the opt-out family. And one of the issues I did not have 27 years ago was screens everywhere and this gobbling up of our attention. So things have changed. I am so grateful that you are a part of the Kindred family, Barbara.
Do you need a question? I have an answer.
Okay. You know what? Barbara has an answer.
I love what everybody was saying because it ties
Okay.
in directly to what we were talking about before you invited me on the call.
Okay.
You know, what really gets through to people and helps alive them is stories. They see themselves in you. Like when you showed up with that family and you saw the kids and everyone breastfeeding and you saw what it could be. So those people gave you permission to be yourself and to do what really was in your heart. So that's what I heard all around here, you know, is that we tell stories and we tell our stories and then other people can resonate with it. That's how Rebecca works, right? So that's how we reach people because and that's what Lisa was talking about before. It's just information. People tend to see it as like you're wronging them. But I think if we turn it into a story and we use our own stories, you know, and our own imperfections, like Rebecca said, sometimes I just wanted to hit my child. I've thought about taking them by the hair, you know, but I never did. But like that urge and I call that is like a leaf in the wind. As a parent, you could either be a leaf in the wind and you're pulled back into your own childhood and you become in those moments of stress, you become like a leaf in the wind, just blown wherever it goes. Or through learning, you can take a breath. And then within that breath, and in that moment, you can choose something different. And even if that something different is, I need a second, tell your partner, I need you to step in here because I don't want to hurt anybody. And to tell your child, mommy's feeling really overwhelmed. And, you know, I tried everything that I could in the moment. And now I don't know what to do anymore. So like, give me a second. I need to time out and take a break. So, you know, being honest, because everybody wants to make their parenting journey like they're so perfect. but really it's the imperfection that people can hear themselves in there and go, oh my God, like, I feel so bad. I'm supposed to be a good mom, but I thought about taking my kid by the hair and shaking. It's terrible, but we all have those moments. So how did you get through that? And telling those stories. So I like to like when I'm talking to parents, you put it out there, like, I'm not any better than you. The way I parent and the way I did it sometimes the choices you have seem really slim. Like, can you imagine a scale and you're just stuck because you could do two things in the moment, and just the scale might just tip a little bit more. And I really don't have the best choice right now, but I can choose the thing that feels just a little bit better than the thing that feels so awful. So in that moment, we might have, like, as we become more conscious parent, and then, coming up with the stories of, like, we all have these moments, that might be the jewel, is taking the moment to take a breath and to choose something outside of that. I'm a leaf in the wind, and when somebody blows me, I have to react in this way, like dominoes falling, where you can learn, I really have the power to choose something different. And sometimes I might not even know the right choice in the moment. I just have to stop and then make the choice in the moment that makes the best sense for me. And sometimes that's being a good parent, right? That's being the best parent.
Leah,
So,
I want Leah to echo what you're saying here, because she's working with a lot of families. Can you just talk about what you put in the chat and what you're perceiving?
I think one of the things that Birth Roots finally has the capacity and the bandwidth and the attention for is really seeing the truth of people's lives. And in particular, there's a way in the US, and I know we're not all based out of the US, but particularly in the US, there's this white, middle-class, neurotypical, heterosexual family norm that we're all supposed to be aspiring to at least perform, at least look like that, even if that's not our truth. And so when you gather groups of parents in a room, the very first thing they're going to do is mask and perform this mysterious middle classness that we all are, and not let on that we have more money, or not let on that we have less money, but just all be generic. And so one of the ways we're working with families is to stop being generic and to be more transparent about the truth of our current situation and the situation that we grew up in, and to pull the shame out of that, to make it safe enough. And what does it take? What is needed for enough trust to be built in the group? And I think that's where the skilled facilitation comes in, is the facilitator's role is to tend to those psychological needs for safety and trust so that people can be honest and transparent. And that's when they fall in love with each other. And then when they fall in love with each other, that's the thing that heals the wound, is the falling in love with each other. So it's not that the facilitator comes and is that sort of clinical or medical model where some authority in the room has some special power to heal others, other than to create the safety and the trust for the guard to come down enough and the armor to come off enough that people start doing that thing where they just care deeply about each other. And both the giving of caring deeply and the receiving of caring deeply is where the healing happens.
and what a relief it is. What a relief it is to put that down, acting as if, and just be who you are. So that's a beautiful gift.
It's almost like there's a static electricity in the room when people share at an honesty level they're not accustomed to, and other people get kind of wide-eyed, like, oh, it's that kind of party?
Yeah.
It's great when the shift occurs and then parents realize that, wow, like arguing and disagreeing over whatever issue takes up so much energy. And yet when we can just connect on that level, it's almost like we're feeding each other's batteries. It's energy creating, not energy wasting. So it's beautiful to see. And when it's happening in a group, it's even more beautiful. Yeah. Love it.
The resonance.
So
Well, it's
what's Leah
attachment, isn't it?
put?
It's attachment in action. It's
Yeah.
dropping the armor. It's letting go of the barriers. It's just trusting and opening and allowing it to happen. And we are all biologically primed for attachment. And that's why parenthood is such a beautiful window of opportunity for couples to work with the changes of parenthood and embrace the changes of parenthood, and and be more attached to each other as couples, as parents and partners. You know, that's how they get through it, is tuning out the noise, creating the nest, the cocoon, and just tuning out everything else and really just focusing on themselves and each other. It's kind of a letting go. It's almost like just a letting go. It's like a radical acceptance of a beautiful constraint that life's changing. We can work with the changes, we can work against the changes, but if we can work with the changes, we can just get there a lot easier and more in love, which is how it ended up for us. But it took a long time to get there.
I love that you said that, Barbara, because so many parents would come to my classes before I had written the book, but they would say, but my child is 12 and I didn't do these things. Is it too late to connection parent with them? And I would say exactly what you just said. You know, you can sit them down and say, you know what, I've always been doing the best I can, but I've learned some new things and I want to try to be a different way. And I'm sorry for the ways that I was that were hurtful to you. And you have my permission that if I am disrespectful to you, to tell me, and I will listen to you.
I just want to add that works for a bad traumatic birth, because it's always in the child, separation and something that's gone wrong. And the mothers were just rolled into like, I never attached to this child. I don't really like you. Like, to tell the story to your child, like, this was your birth and this is what I wished had happened. I wish I had done this. I wish I had asked for you. I wish I had held you. And even to babies and adult, you know, telling the story, they might act like they don't care, but something does soften inside. And it's so healing. And you could do it to a teeny baby. If you've had a bad birth, you could do it to a 3-year-old. You could even do it to a sleeping child where they can actually, you know, there's studies that they can actually hear you, you know, and you could say, this is what happened. And I wish it had happened this way. And I love you. And that's really, really, really healing. And it's free. And it's something you can do right now.
One of the shifts that I've been bringing to my own facilitation is a different orientation, I think, for much of that past 20 years, or at least 10 years ago. There was so much orientation to, we don't have enough information and we need to educate and optimize ourselves and stuff our heads with more information, and moving away from knowing what other people have thought or said about everything and moving toward a remembering that is more embodied, of like, you know, when someone in the room says something that you needed to hear, and you do that softening and you remember how to connect with other people. And that is all our children want from us, is for us to remember how to be in connection, how to be in relationship. And at a time where a lot of people are having some kind of an epiphany or awakening that we need to exist in community, and that word community can be overused to the point of not having meaning. I think, what is community but relationship, and what is relationship but trust, and what is trust but remembering? And so rather than enter into a group of parents thinking, I need to give them information, I need to get them, you know, tips, techniques, tricks, hacks, facts, I'm more interested in creating the kind of space where humans can remember each other and their the relationship that would be natural if nothing were in the way.
You're describing Jenny Joseph's JJ way.
Yeah.
She's a British midwife who came to the US and was so horrified by the birth practices and statistics. We're the most dangerous place in the world to have a baby, by the way, in the US. But she created a clinic to serve at-risk mothers in Florida. And what she found, the first time I ever listened to her, by the way, I was on an APA conference, and I'm listening for how did she get her, the maternal morbidity rates for Black women are 3 to 5 times greater than white women. And she was able to get it down to near zero. So what Jenny Joseph said in her call, that was the big secret, is she trained her staff to meet the mother when they came through the door of the clinic like a human being. Hi, how are you? Be relational. And she said this mother may have taken 3 buses to get here. Her feet might be hurting. She might be thirsty. So the whole way through her process of going through and getting support for her pregnancy and eventual labor was relational. And that is the secret. That was the big secret. I couldn't, I couldn't, so you're right, Leah. Now, I do have to also back up and say that Jenny Joseph has taken all of her ability to train other people in this JJ way and show them how to do it. And she has reports, and she has trained a lot of professionals. And she was featured as one of Time Magazine's 100 Women of the Year about a year or two ago. So I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say not having a something to look at to say this is how we're going to train people, and this is the science. And for example, the Evolved Nest Science and the Learning Center we have and the curriculum we have, it does seem to be most effective with training professionals and practitioners who can then work directly with families in this relational way. Because coming in cold or for the first time hearing this big long list is not fair to the parent, especially in a country where you don't have the basics to have a child in the US. You don't have family leave, maternal leave, health care. And again, we're at the bottom of the list for family wellness because of all of this. So we're careful about the training. All of our materials are online for free, but the Nesting Ambassadors program right now has about 27 people from around the world, professionals and practitioners, who are learning to use the science that's there to justify how they're going to make these modifications in their profession, so they don't get called out for doing this.
Yeah.
You know, like, no, this is a scientifically valid way of approaching and teaching. And then they are able to integrate the science, which is already, again, a holistic theory of our evolved developmental niche, just what we need as a species to thrive. And then what you're doing is the praxis. This is the on the ground, real life, practical, applied, evolved nest. So thank you all so much for bringing the stories Barbara.
I can go next. It was kind of bittersweet for me, I think, to reflect back on what I'd written, because it took me back to a time when, you know, I went into parenthood with such high hopes and so much love for my husband. And I mean, most of you know my story, that the wheels fell off us at about 8 weeks in, and we were arguing and growing distant at a time that I thought that we would be happier together than ever. And it wasn't until I became a relationship counselor that I realized that this period of relationship adjustment is perfectly normal and makes so much sense for parents. But because we weren't prepared for that, and we didn't know that what was happening to us was normal, and we certainly didn't know how to navigate it and work through it as a team, and how that the energy that sucked from me kind of, I guess, took away from being the best version of a mother that I wanted to be back at that time. And that made me really sad. You know, it still makes me sad to reflect on it, that, you know, I was so caught up with trying to understand what was happening to us as a couple, because we'd been together for so long and we were so happy before we started having a family. But then that's also where the passion grew, to help to prepare and support other couples go through that messy part, that messy middle, you know, and help them get to the other side. So I love what you're doing, Leah. I know the difference that a good birth can make. We definitely had that in our favor. We had an amazing midwife that choreographed a beautiful, what I call whole family bonding birth for us, because my husband was right in there, you know, she was giving him instructions on how to do acupressure. So my pain relief came from him. She was there giving him instructions on how to support, you know, hold me in a supported squat so I could give birth. So he was as much a part of the whole birth process as she was. And I'll forever be grateful for that, because that's kind of what bonded us through those first couple of hard years. But then what I was left with, and what I'm grateful for now, is the opportunity to support couples through that messy middle and help them to recognize that it's really normal for relationships to change. In fact, it's healthy for relationships to change and adapt and grow when partners become a family, because life changes. You know, everything changes. Parenthood changes everything, and so people have to change in order to adapt, right? Like we all had to do that during the pandemic. We had to change to adapt. We didn't want to, but we had to do it. And then some benefits ended up coming out from that. You had, you know, people that were working outside the home normally working inside the home and making all of that work. So when you embrace change, sometimes good things can happen. And so I was grateful to be able to, you know, put those thoughts down on paper and let parents know that there is a way through the messy middle that can bond them closer together as partners, while they're each also finding their feet as, you know, mums, dads, or parents. So very grateful to be a part of it. Thank you.
Oh, we're so glad. I'm so excited about the information that parents are going to be getting. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Pam. Can I speak a little bit more about that? Because I
Yeah.
think what most parents don't realize, and this is the work that I did as a relationship counselor, is that having a baby changes the dynamics of a couple's relationship. So parents often don't realize how deep those changes are going. So you know, it really pulls apart the structure of who they were as a couple before. And if they don't know that, often they'll think that there's something wrong with them, or more commonly, there's something wrong with their partner, or their partner's changed since they had a baby, and that becomes a problem. And then, sort of, the temporary adjustments of parenthood can become permanent relationship problems, and parents can end up separating because they don't know this stuff. In fact, I'm thinking of a celebrity couple that I just learned about last week. That sounds very familiar. And so I think we really do a disservice not preparing parents in this way. I think of this as almost like pre-parenting, like it's preparing. You know, expecting is such a waste of time. We could be preparing instead. And I think that this is a really crucial part of pre-parenting, because I think for me, my capacity to be the mother that I wanted to be, and my capacity to give out that amount that often over that long a time, really was harder to do when I was not happy in my relationship with my husband. When I felt supported by him and appreciated by him, it was much easier for me to let that then flow into my mothering. And you know, and the reverse is also true. So I really think that we're doing parents a disservice by not giving them this opportunity to organize their relationship and to start building those deeper foundations that being a family really kind of requires, from couples. Yeah. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk more about this. Thank you.
And we appreciate that this information is going to be available to parents.
Ellie, I have a question about your groups. Don't you do groups?
Yeah, we do. So it's interesting what you're saying, Leah, about the couples coming together and the map, them creating the map, because that's, I guess, what I did as a relationship counselor. You know, over 25 years, I was hearing couples describe their map. And that's how I ended up kind of creating a map of early parenthood, which is, you know, what the book is about. It's about, my background is in developmental psychology and relationship counseling, or adult attachment. And so I combined those two things, and I applied them to what I was hearing from my couples and what I'd been through with my own husband. And I broke that whole period down into 8 stages. And the first 2 stages are about building the nest, preparing to build the nest, and then building the nest when you're actually there. They're the first 2 stages. And then I now teach the model to other perinatal professionals. And I'm partnering with my local university. Becoming Us classes are actually running in my 2 local public hospitals, have been for a couple of years. Yeah. And we're evaluating the program. And so,
I'm just wondering if couples have the moment I had where we just don't have these relational, intelligent ways of being in our culture. And then when you see it and experience it, it comes in somatically, and you get to feel it. And there's a whole other level to that coming through. And I'm just trying to imagine couples and sitting in a room and watching somebody mentoring them, or understanding that, oh, I'm not odd like you're saying, and oh, this is exactly what we're supposed to be doing. We're going to go through this now together.
You're going to go through it together. And it gives them a lot of hope. You know, that's one of the things that I hear most often is that, wow, we've got some hope now.
So we need to scale up your program and Leah's, and we'll be fine. And I'll retire. We can retire.
Yeah. And it's beautiful work to do. And it's beautiful work to do. Like the facilitators, you know, you would experience the same thing. The facilitators love to do it because it's beautiful, it's hopeful, it's purposeful, and it's, yeah, it works. Thank you.
Rebecca, can we hear from you? Because you've got a big piece.
Yeah, so I'm listening to Leah and Ellie talk about their programs, and there's so much of that. If we can get it early, it makes it so much easier. And if we can support the couples to connect with each other early, it makes it so much easier. And as I reflect on my work, I've spent way more time with, okay, we missed that. That didn't work well. Now what do we do? And I find that you know, part of this was my own journey. Okay, that didn't go the way that I wanted it to go. How do we get back on track? How do we reconnect? How do we find our way back into connection with each other? And oh my gosh, I'm not parenting the way that I want to. I want to be this nurturing, loving parent, and I want to hurt my child sometimes, or I have these impulses that I feel really bad about, but I don't know what to do about it. I don't know how to navigate that. How do I find a way forward? How do I find sometimes I've got parents who just don't like this child. And what do I do? How do I handle that? And I'm not on the same page with my partner. And it can be really overwhelming. Parents think, okay, well, oh well, I missed the boat. Now there's nothing I can do. It's just going to be a struggle. And what I have found in my work is that that's not true. And that it's never too late to heal. It's never too late to take whatever is happening in this moment. You don't have to do the work of everything and everything that ever happened to you to make it different right now. By just being present with what's happening right now, there's usually all the information that you need to find a new way forward. But we have to start being able to think about it differently. We are trained in our culture to think about children's behaviors in certain ways. We're trained to judge ourselves, and we have these loops that we get stuck in. And there isn't a way forward in those loops. We're stuck in the, yep, all right, oh gosh, and now they're going to be a teenager. And how bad is that going to be if it's already this hard now? And it's like, no, stop. Right here, right now, what's happening? What else is happening for you? What story is this touching on for you? What's happening in your body and in your nervous system? In this situation with your partner or with your child or with your mother, what's happening? And we can find a new way forward when we make space for those feelings. We're terrible in our culture at feelings. You know, we've got to make space for them. We've got to make space for our experience to be heard and seen and felt, so that we have enough capacity to see and hear and feel the experience of someone we love, that we might be missing because we're filling in gaps with, you know what? This is going to end up terrible. This child reminds me of my brother, and my brother ended up an alcoholic and in prison. So therefore, if I don't stop these behaviors right now, then that's where we're going. But we don't even recognize we're doing that. And we're missing this moment where we can actually connect with our child, with our partner, with whatever that story is getting in the way. And so, and this is what I've been doing. It's really interesting because I started in the early parenting work, And I just kept getting more and more people later who were saying, okay, but now what do I do? Okay, I co-slept. I did the things. I baby wore, I extended breastfed, and I'm still struggling here now that my child is older. What do I do? And I remember being at it was a Families for Natural Living. I was facilitating, and I had this mother who had just gone through a divorce, and her child wouldn't sleep, and he was jumping all over the place. And she just looked at me and she said, "What do I do? How do I help this child?" And I looked at her and I said, "I don't know. But I'm going to figure it out because you're not the only one. How do we reconnect? How do we support when something goes south, when something happens that's big and hard? How do we come back into connection?" And so I'm really excited to be part of this because it's so important. We need the pieces at the beginning. We need to support as many people as possible to have these pieces. We need grandparents to understand these pieces of what needs to happen early in relationships. And we also need to understand what to happen when things go off track, because they do. They will. I mean, it's a guarantee. Yeah.
Thank you, Rebecca. This is why I'm so excited about the collection of people that are doing these articles, because I feel like we are getting it from birth all the way to where, this didn't go well. How do we fix this? So, to cover as many bases as we can. So who's not here is Tracy Gillette, who is kind of, the best way I can describe Tracy, what she's doing is kind of like Birth Roots, but online, the kind of support she's providing for parents and being able to listen to your heart. And so that's her article. And Erin, who wrote The Opt-Out Family about reclaiming our children from screens, had a family situation where she couldn't write a new article, but gave us permission so that we can include some of that. That's really going to help parents. And Rebecca in the UK is doing about reward and punishment and giving us a window into that. And even though that's kind of older information, it never took. No, it's still new to everybody, even though it's older. And I feel really excited about what I'm doing, which is about the baby wearing, because I am convinced that if we can support parents in, whatever that means, if getting them a sling or, a baby carrier or the information, if they could do an hour a day, I know that would grow into more. And if they could do it for 1 year, that it's going to completely rewire how it is for that baby to be in the world and in life. And the thing I feel kind of excited about, that I just turned 75, is that I have nothing at stake about telling the truth and showing the proof that we know this, and we've known it for, since the beginning of time. People have known it. And so I can just, with abandon, kind of be out there in the world and sharing this information. So we have an incredible collection here of wisdom. And I think in each one of us, there's something that was in our life that sent us in that direction. When with the Alliance for Transforming the Lives of Children, we used to say our wounds are our gifts. That something that was hard for us, we decided we didn't want it to be that hard for everybody else. So we were going to track it down and see what we could figure out about it. So, and then having this within the framework of the Evolved Nest, that it's sort of like everything that's about Evolved Nest supports what we're writing, and everything we're writing supports the Evolved Nest. So it feels like a perfect marriage to me, that we're all contributing this information and our wisdom and our work to use the vehicle of this issue to get it out there into the world. I'm excited about that. What do you think, Lisa? Have we covered everything?
Oh, I think we're just getting started, ladies. I have lots of questions, but I'm gonna.
There's the dose book if you're interested.
Yeah.
Look out, world.
Questions. I think just having time together with all of you, and I know your time is so precious, But what we have to work with at Kindred is a nonprofit emergent praxis platform. Get your head around that for a minute. Emergent meaning it's coming out of the ethers now. It's the next wave of consciousness that we want to work with, and I see it coming up all these calls. People are looking for language, they're looking for concepts, they can feel it, as our culture now is blowing up spectacularly, anyone who wasn't aware that it's not going to work is becoming aware. And the question of what are we going to do now and what else is there? That is a question that parents used to whisper to me when I ran all these groups over years. They would whisper to me, what else is there? What else is there if I don't let my baby cry it out and stop picking them up and stop formula feeding them or stop, what is it what else is there? Well, there is a different culture and there is a different model, and it is based on normalizing nurturing. But the tactics for bringing that forward means all of us have to stay frosty and do what we're doing, exactly what we're doing, right where we're doing it. And your models that you are providing for people are so hopeful and helpful and showing this is how it can be done. Somebody is actually doing this. This is how it can be done. It is remarkable. And I'm so, so very grateful that all of you are here. And Rebecca, that I have flown as your wingman at different conferences over a decade ago. And you're still here doing your work. I'm so grateful to that. We did a presentation once in Washington called When the Shift Hits the Fan. And it was about the shift that we were so confident was coming. And here we are. What is it, 15 years later, maybe? And here we are. Oh, gosh. I think she popped off.
Love it.
Yeah. So
What a title.
we're still here trying to midwife and bring this shift through. It's as
happening. The shift is happening, Lisa.
What?
I'm going to borrow that, if that's okay. I'm going to borrow that for my next conference submission. I love it.
When the shift hits the fan.
Yeah.
I still have a transcript of our discussion about.
No, because I'll be talking about the couple relationship, but it's so.
It is. No,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful. Take it. It is.
Yeah, it's so
Oh, if
perfect.
it's not happening there, it's not happening anywhere. No, that's totally true.
Well, Lisa, I just want to tell you, because the shift did hit the fan, and just look at Instagram with all the people doing their natural births. Look at Pampers commercial, skin to skin, putting the baby skin to skin. And I've seen on TV with the natural births, they're doing that too. Whoa, that's huge. So this is an underlying surge that's happening all over social media, which is out there, which mothers never had even a chance, like very rarely in the past. You'd have to go to all the little hippie places or be friends with someone, but it's everywhere. So the shift is happening.
Yeah.
I wrote an article on Kindred called My Grandma's Not a Hippie, because I was so confused when I started trying to make these natural parenting choices that people were calling me a hippie. And I said, no, I'm just doing what my grandma did. My grandma is not a hippie.
I love that. It's awesome.
I thought of you the other day, Lisa, because I remember that we had a conversation when I was there in 2014, and you said to me something about how I talk about attachment as if it's something that I can talk about. Because back then it was like it kind of went underground because there was backlash about, mums feeling like they were being blamed for their children's insecure attachment styles. And I brought that up with the student, the PhD student that's working on the project, and he said, oh no, like if you go on YouTube or TikTok or whatever it is these days, there's so many videos about attachment styles. Like it's becoming part of the vernacular, but the problem is that people are weaponizing them. So like that's a shift. That's a massive shift that, we can talk about attachment now. And in fact, there's probably better ways that we could be talking about attachment, but at least people are talking about it. That's just been the last 10 years.
So in Scotland, and this is on Kindred, they already talked about attachment as a country for a long, here comes Rebecca again. But I think I'll see what she has to say. Rebecca, are you there?
Yep.
I was like, well, I shouldn't have brought up when the shift hits the fan. There she goes.
Yeah, my internet went down. So I'm on the roof now.
All right. I was saying in Scotland, because that country led with teaching about attachment parenting, when they brought in ACEs and they wanted everyone to be ACEs aware, they had a plan for how to approach trauma. And the ACEs does a score of 1 to 10 and trauma, how trauma. And so people started to change the police department tactics for showing up at a house for domestic abuse, for example, based on ACEs, understanding what was going on in the home. And there's a trauma cycle playing out here. However, what happened with the ACEs scores coming to the United States is that we're a country who drugs children. So now that somebody was talking about weaponizing concepts, that was you, Ellie, weaponizing concepts and language out there to pathologize people is something that the United States does horribly. And, so you can see the interest in ACEs here has been carefully trotted out. They're calling themselves PACEs now, positive and adverse childhood experiences, because they're trying to balance out the effect of now having another way to label and then drug. And we don't want to do that. So what Scotland is providing is that you can have a baseline of attachment in place, that everybody's on the same page about what that looks like. It would be great if we could do that, normalize nurturing in the United States. So we have a baseline. And then when the pathology and whatever starts coming up, we can look at it with eyes of our human compassion leading the way, hopefully.